Welcome to Trade and Tariff Tuesdays. We're back with another edition of Avalara's webinar series discussing the Trump administration's tariffs and their impact on trade compliance. We started this weekly series back in February, so if this is your first time, welcome. If you joined us before, welcome back. My name is Regina and I'll be your host. Before we dive in, just a couple of housekeeping items. A friendly reminder that Avalara cannot provide legal or tax advice. On your screen is our safe harbor policy. Please take a moment to review. We are recording today's event, and you'll receive the recording later today. The console you're looking at can be customized. Feel free to move or resize the windows. The additional resources section contains a lot of great related resources, including the slide deck. There are several ways to engage with presenters and attendees. First, if you have any questions, please submit them using the Ask a Question box. We will save time at the end for Q&A. You may also submit troubleshooting questions there. Second, you can join our attendee chat. Click the icon at the bottom of your screen with two chat bubbles. The attendee chat will appear. We encourage you to introduce yourself, network, and discuss today's topic. Third, you can react to the presentation by clicking on the emoji icon and reacting. Last, we've heard your feedback and we've extended today's webinar to 45 minutes to have time, a little bit more time for Q&A. Since this session is less than an hour and intended to be interactive and responsive, it is not eligible for CPE credit. Let's meet our presenters. We're joined today by several members of the Avalara team. Craig Reed, General Manager, Cross-Border, Patrick Frith, Senior Director of Growth, Cross-Border, and Shane Bogdan, Director of Sales, Cross-Border. That's all I have for housekeeping, so I'll pass it over to our presenters.
Thanks, Regina, and welcome, gentlemen. Shane, welcome back. Shane just welcomed his second child, so congratulations, my friend. We are we are off to I counted actually. This is our 16th Trade and Tariff Tuesday, and I'm always amazed that we have so much to talk about, and this week is certainly not an exception. Boy, oh boy, have we had some changes. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about the latest news that's come out with, I'm sure everyone's read, with China, implications to your business, and then how you can take action with our products and services. So why don't we dive right into it. We have a poll question. This is something we do just to kind of get it kicked off here. So how much did the US and China agree to reduce tariffs for 90 days starting tomorrow? So this is not necessarily a trick question, but it was interesting that it was presented this way. But we're going to get into that. While they're answering that, gentlemen, thoughts on all the changes? It's been a pretty dynamic few days, hasn't it?
Well, I thought it was a quiet weekend until late Sunday night, and then there was all the changes with regards to US and China in both directions, trade in both directions. So that's really made an interesting start of the week.
Yeah, it sure has. Well, the answer, 56.5% of you got it right. China and the US agreed to reduce their tariffs by 115% each. So if you remember, the US had 145% punitive tariffs and China had 125%. So now if you reduce those 115, we are left with 30 and 10. So we're going to get into that and the implications of that here in a second. So why don't we just kind of jump into the news here, Patrick, and talk about, it all kicked off with Liberation Day, really, didn't it?
Right. So Rose Garden, April the 2nd, we all remember that famous day. This hasn't gone away. So the reciprocal tariffs, which the US drew up against 59 countries, we don't have them all here, there's too many to list, they are just simply on pause for 90 days. So the pause ends just before summertime, July the 9th. The 10% is still in place. Let's not forget that. The 10% is still in place. So anything that's coming into the US right at this moment is 10%. But we're running out of time. The 90 days, I think now we're over 30 days into that 90 days. So we're running out of time now. Countries are running out of time to do deals because this is still looming. We still have this. right before, peak period, the holiday season, big imports taking place over the coming months. So deals have to be done. But let's not take this off the radar. We can't forget that this is still coming, and we need to brace ourselves and prepare for it.
Yeah, and I think it was Lutnick that said that they're going to be doing a trade deal a day for 90 days, and that's how they're going to get everything done. But it looks like they're a little behind because we're 2 trade deals in and we're 30 days in. So there's a lot of work to do yet.
And
so
even on the UK deal, that was the big announcement. We saw that towards the end of last week, but really no details. A lot about steel coming into the US from the UK, and then beef going to the UK market from the US. But other than that, there was no details. So a lot of the fanfare, we're hearing the fanfare, but we aren't seeing the details yet because they're still being negotiated.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about, we've got on the left-hand side, we show what was originally proposed in the Rose Garden, and then where we've kind of landed since there. I think maybe on the next slide we can talk about that a bit more. So let's start with China. So as we talked about, they reduced 115% each. So that leaves 30% punitive tariffs for China to the U.S. and 10% for U.S. to China. However, the 25% Section 301 tariffs are still in effect. I think there was a question kind of along those lines, and I saw it pop up in the Q&A. So that means that in total, remember that the 30% that it's been reduced to is still a punitive tariff, right? So it's stackable on top of the 301 tariffs that were already there, which means that effectively most of the tariffs are going to stand around 55%. And interestingly, that kind of foots with the latest announcement that packages under the $800 de minimis are going to be at either 100. We'll talk about this in a second, but either $100 or 54%. So those two things kind of tie together. There's also still carve-outs for electronics and other products that are separate from the 30%. So it sounds like there's still a lot of information to digest. It's obviously late breaking. So how those carve-outs are going to be treated is still not entirely clear, but that's where we stand today. So 30% additional tariff. The other interesting part of the news that popped across is President Trump has said that if China does a good job with fentanyl, and there is a lot of discussion around fentanyl apparently at the meeting in Geneva, that they could see the 20% fentanyl tariffs go away. So think about the 30% as 10% being, what everyone else is getting, and then China's getting this additional 20% fentanyl tariff that they've suggested there's an opening for that to go away. So that could be interesting. For Canada and Mexico, both basically in the same boat. They're at 25%, except for USMCA, which is a 0% tariff, obviously. For Canada, that's about 40% of goods. For Mexico, it's about 50% of goods. The only real difference is Canada still has reciprocal tariffs in place of 25% for about $60 billion worth of goods. They haven't increased them, and they haven't removed them. As for everyone else, they are at the 10% level. And as Patrick noted too, the UK has negotiated the 10%, except for steel and aluminum tariffs being removed, and the UK car tariffs are reduced to 10% as well. That was in exchange for access to the UK market with American beef and some other products. So the UK is on that track. 25% steel and aluminum still in effect for everyone else, 25% on automobiles for everyone else, 25% on countries that buy oil from Venezuela still in effect for everyone else. And then, as I mentioned before, the 10% tariff applies to everyone. So, gentlemen, did I miss anything? Are we?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely up to date here on the percentages. Just noting a question here. We were talking about the 90-day reduction for China. I see a question from Robert Petrie here regarding the rare earths. There has been suggestions that the rare earths, the stringent export licenses required could be eased, but no, officially as of this moment, not yet. I guess that is a card which is going to be played in the ensuing negotiations between the US and China. So
yeah, and I'd be surprised if that's not part of the picture, because I think I read a stat that 90% of rare earths are mined and processed in China. Although Canada has a lot of rare earths too, it's just not they don't have the processing capability. History.
Hey guys, the one thing that I will just say is that I'm surprised that there hasn't been too much movement on is just in relation to Canada and Mexico with the 25% there, and the amount that the U.S. is importing from Canada that is not USMCA compliant. And I know Mark Carney, the new PM up there, Craig was in the Oval Office last week and everything. But that one, with me being gone for 4 weeks, I would have never thought that actually there would be a China agreement prior to the PM coming to the Oval Office, and then Canada still staying the same on both sides of the border. So that's one that I'm interested to see what's going on, because again, I think the rate is around 30 to 40% of goods only qualify for USMCA, and a lot of that is actually coming in specifically from crude oil and energy. If you're looking at it from the stuff that's not qualifying, it's the things along the lines of from top three, I believe it's apparel, coffee, and also electronics. So parts that are coming over from China, going to Canada, and then Canada is basically manufacturing. U.S. is importing those things. So there's a significant number there, and I'm really interested to see when that's going to accelerate talks with the new PM.
Yeah, speaking as a Canadian, I'm pretty interested in when that's going to happen. So, I kind of wonder though. A lot of the market reaction and a lot of the supply chain disruptions and a lot of the noise in the market has been due to basically a trade standstill between the U.S. and China. So, I think that there was a pretty big imperative for both countries to get goods moving again. At least goods between Mexico and the U.S. and Canada and the U.S. are moving, albeit there's still issues with the 25%. But I suspect that there's been a bit of a pattern set, hasn't there, with China's at 30%, but suggestions that the 20% could go away. The UK came in at 10%. Everyone else is at 10%. So it feels like this 10% level is kind of a baseline that the administration is shooting for, with some carve-outs in different areas in exchange for access to reciprocal markets. And that sort of flows into this slide, which shows how things have spiked just with the tariff announcements that have just happened. So, this slide we need to update because it just changed. So the effective tariff rate is going to drop back significantly now, I would think, closer to the 10% level perhaps, which would take us back to like 1947. But I guess that wouldn't bring into effect any other free trade agreements. So, maybe we hover somewhere in the 5% range. The average rate in 2024 was 2.5%. So would it be double that? We don't know. We'll keep track of this for you though. All right. Yeah. Let's talk to big changes here.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we jumped onto de minimis, I just wanted to address a couple of questions which we're seeing coming in, Craig, with regards to my shipment's on the water. It's on its way. It arrives at such and such a date. When will I qualify for the new reduced rate that's been agreed between the US and China, the reduction that we've seen as of tomorrow, Wednesday? So there isn't anything clear about that just yet, is the short answer. What we saw when this all started back at Liberation Day and before, was it's the departure date. The duty that will be applied is related to the departure date from the port of origin. So if it sets sail on Thursday, then the rate that was in place on Thursday when it set sail is what's going to be applied when it eventually arrives into the US. So that could be 3 weeks later, that could be 4 weeks later, whatever the sailing time is. So that is what happened. We don't know yet, and it's not clear yet if that is going to be that precedent is going to be used for shipments that arrive from tomorrow, 1 minute past midnight onwards. So we'll have to wait to see. And I guess the best thing to do is just reach out to your broker because they see it happening in real time, and maybe they'll give you some answers.
Yeah, and it should be part of an executive order where they detail some of those things. I know that in some cases in the past, there's been refunds have been available. So don't know yet, but I would suspect that there may be some relief on the refund side. But we'll see. Don't know for sure. So actually a question, apropos question from Tanya is the China eliminated de minimis still in place with the temporary reduced tariffs. De minimis is eliminated for China still. So anything under, even with this revision, anything under $800 is still subject to duties and taxes from the first dollar. However, the change, this is actually out of date now, so because it just came across this morning. So the change now is that it's going to be $100 or 54% of the value, which kind of ties back to that 55% that we talked about earlier. So, but gentlemen, not clear. I would suspect it's the greater of, but and they also said that it's not going to rise to $200, which was part of the previous proposal. So that's, I believe, where we stand now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a funny one because, listen, de minimis was one of the catalysts for, de minimis has been a bipartisan, I'll just remind everybody that de minimis has been a bipartisan topic for the past 2+ years. Again, this all stemmed when we started these original webinars. A lot of this was based upon de minimis and tariffs coming in after that fact. The whole piece here was around the implosion of fentanyl coming in from Chinese imports. Again, close to 1.4 billion last year compared to 2015 at 125 million. You can see here 4 million parcels coming in a day from China under de minimis, 50% of that being from China. Now, this has been a big topic to us. It's funny, before this call, Craig, Patrick, and I are going through the White House fact sheet trying to decipher, well, what does this actually mean in terms of the 54%? Is that a combination of the 301s plus the 30%? Because Craig alluded to before, in Trump's first administration, the 301s, there was about an average of a 20% tariff rate. Is that the 54% we're most likely alluding to a combination of the new 30% plus 54, but this is something we're trying to get further details as this comes across. Unfortunately, the facts are, within the past 24 hours, the facts really haven't fully surfaced yet on this piece. But yeah, as what we know, 54% or $100.
Yeah, and actually, Leon in the Q&A got it right. There is a de minimis, he said there's a de minimis rate of 54% for shipments under $800, but a 30% overall duty rate plus whatever pre-2025 duties and tariffs were in place. So that's well put, Leon.
Yep.
That is what is in place, and the 30% overall duty plus pre-2025 duties equals roughly 54%. So that's, I believe, how they would have come up with that.
So you think about typically the orders that come in, shipments that come in under $800. You think Shein, think Temu, the $20 T-shirt that you've ordered from Shein, 54% whacked on top of that. Okay, as part of the duty that you're going to have to pay for that product coming in. So it's still real, and the de minimis has been eliminated for China and Hong Kong origin shipments.
Yeah, and actually, Leon posted another follow-up asking, how should we interpret de minimis rates of 54% / $100? Is it the higher election of, lower of, versus the 90% $75? So as far as we can tell, Leon, it is, or historically, they haven't said specifically, or we haven't been able to find it prior to this webinar. Our strong suspicion is it will be the greater of $100 or 54%. and that would replace the 90% slash $75. So that's where we believe we sit. Again, we haven't had this just came out, so we haven't seen the nitty gritty, but we'll clarify that and discuss it at the next webinar.
And just to follow up with that as well, question from Scott. De minimis is applicable only to China. The changes in de minimis, China and Hong Kong. That's correct. All of the countries in the world enjoy the 800 threshold when goods come into the US. It's just products made in China, made in Hong Kong that come into the US. And remember, Scott, it can come via Timbuktu, but if its origin was originally China or Hong Kong, the de minimis has been eliminated for that product.
Are there tariffs on Timbuktu? What's the tariff on Timbuktu?
You put me on the spot with that one.
Hey, you know what? Let me grab another question here from Catherine. What's the definition of USMCA compliance for goods coming from Canada? How does that need to be shown? So, one thing we would say is definitely work with a broker, exporter or a trade attorney on those pieces. But what we would say is that means that for USMCA qualifying, it means substantial transformation has occurred within United States, Canada, or Mexico. So basically it's called the regional value content. I believe it's around 75% of that good needs to be crafted within those three countries. I believe it may even be higher on that factor, which is why you see a lot of goods like energy, primarily sourced from Canada coming into the United States. It's all sourced out of Canada. You see a lot of it's funny, one of the top 10 ones is actually goods and agriculture, because they are grown within Canada or they are composed of goods that are either produced within the US, Mexico, and manufactured in Canada, which would then qualify. There's also, auto engines as well. There's a lot of parts out there that are maybe produced in Canada, but they're taking into some other components that were produced in the US or Mexico, or then manufactured then to completion within one of those three countries. So again, it's where there's substantial transformation, but most specifically, it's where that regional value content is. You also do need a certification that your good then does apply for USMCA. So that's just another piece there. But again, it all relies back on the piece that those goods have to primarily be composed of United States, Canada, Mexican components and manufactured within those countries.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. Actually, that kind of brings us to an important, I think this is an important slide. We call this the 4 horsemen of global trade. So we've talked about de minimis exemptions. So these are really the pieces of the puzzle that determine, what's going to be paid and what the rules are. So I'll start out with tariff code classification, the HS code, or commonly called the HS code, a country level code for the good. That's really the Rosetta Stone, because it determines everything that follows. If you, and it's really important that you know your HS codes and you have them accurately reported when you're declaring for customs. So the tariff code classification is very important. What you declare as value is extremely important. I've seen a lot of noise on LinkedIn and other forums where folks are talking about, hey, I can just reduce the declared value, or I can report the what I paid for it, not what I sold it for. You have to be really careful with this, folks, because CBP is paying attention, and declared value has to be the value of the good, the value that it was sold for. And then finally, country of origin. If you think of a table, the rows would be the HS codes, and the columns are the country of origin, so where it was made. And oftentimes folks get this mixed up and think that, well, if it was made in, or if it was coming from the UK, then it's subject to UK tariffs. It doesn't matter where it's made. Yes, it does matter where it's made. And I actually saw a question pop through in, I have to find it, but I believe it was if there's a mixed basket and there's goods that are from China and goods that are from other countries, does the entire basket get subject to the China tariffs? Well, no, it would be the Chinese origin items which are subject to the Chinese tariffs, and the other items would be subject to their tariffs based on the classification code and the country of origin, and whether there's any de minimis exemptions and what the declared value is. So that's how the whole thing kind of comes together. So I'll stop there. Gentlemen, any thoughts or comments on that?
We get this question a lot. I was with a customer 2 weeks ago in the UK, and they do baskets, hampers of different products, which then they sell as a hamper and ship around the world, including to the US. Some of those products are made in China, some are not, different countries, and it all comes down to your line items. So in your customs entry, when it enters into the US, let's say there's 5 items in the basket. It could be 5 items in a box. It doesn't have to be a basket. 5 items. Each line item has to be identified in the entry along with its HS code and along with its country of origin. So that will then be calculated at line item level. And Avalara, that's what we do. We calculate things at line item level based on the HS code, based on the country of origin, and then the duty applicable to that particular item is calculated, and then all 5 items are then summed together, and there you have your total amount of duty. So it's at be thinking line item level.
Yeah. Yep. Or why don't we talk about how some folks are reacting to the latest tariff turmoil? I think we've seen that there's been an outcry from CEOs on what's going to happen, how it can disrupt supply chains. There's been a reduction in the number of freight vessels. I don't know if that started up again based on what just happened. States suing Trump over the tariffs, decrease in book containers, 75, like the number of packages coming in under de minimis. So, I guess this all says, gentlemen, that with the latest changes, reducing back to 30%, what are the effects going to be? Because I think everything would have stopped and then started up again, right? So is everything going back into play? And now we're going to see shipping recover. How long will that take? What kind of impacts it's going to have? Because it'll take a while to work its way through the supply chain, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, if you're a buyer in the US and you're wanting to stock your warehouses ready for the rest of the year, which so many companies are thinking of doing, right? We've got the holiday period coming up in less than 6 months. Now is the time to pull the trigger, I would have thought, to get that inventory across the water into the US within the 90-day pause and enjoy the reduced tariffs that we're seeing, that we're talking about here as of tomorrow. So I think capacity, shipping capacity and even air capacity is just going to get snapped up over the next 90 days. There's going to be a scramble to get things in.
Yeah, and I know we have a couple of things on there in relation to the 3 CEOs talking. The amount of organizations from Ford to Mattel, et cetera, that have actually paused their 2025 guidance to the market is, I don't remember seeing such pause in guidance until COVID, since COVID. The other piece on there was the 12 states, suing. I think that is a good topic just to quickly discuss, because there's a couple legislation issues happening right now. You may have seen the acronyms out there, IEEPA, IEEPA, which is the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. This is how the majority of these tariffs are actually being put into place on such a broad reach. This differs from the steel and aluminum, where it's like a Section 232. That's more related to specific industries, et cetera. But what these states and there's also other corporations that are basically putting lawsuits out there saying, well, these actually our products are not actually under international emergency. So why are we being imposed by these specific tariffs? So I think this is going to be a piece that's going to be interesting to watch in the news over the next 45 days on how this legislation impacts the tariff rates out there, and if it does anything.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing to watch is the level of enforcement, right? You've seen a significant uptick in the CBP enforcement. And this kind of goes back to what we said before with the 4 horsemen. Make sure you've got the right HS codes, make sure that your declared value is correct, make sure you have the country of origin right, because the enforcement is increasing. It'll be interesting to see what these stats look like for April. But I think that there's going to be continued focus on especially goods coming from China, because that's where they suspect the fentanyl to be flowing from. So make sure you've got your information wired tight, I guess would be the message there.
Yeah, and also that there's going to be other parties out there trying to skirt the China loophole and potentially move those goods to other countries like Vietnam, et cetera, recent article came out was Vietnam was seeing an influx of Chinese goods coming in. And just a reminder, you cannot change country of origin once you import it into another country if it was manufactured in China, to try to skirt around that piece. But South Korea, Vietnam, I know have recently put out some things from the government saying that they've been starting to see an influx from China of manufacturers trying to move around that piece.
Yeah, very interesting what folks have tried to do to get around it. Shein and Temu have chosen just to show import charges right on the page. This will obviously change now, so be interesting to see what happens here if some retailers decide to import or pull it into their margins given that it's dropped, or what ultimately happens with these latest changes. So the impacts from the end of the de minimis exemption from China and Hong Kong, we've seen a pretty significant decrease in container shipments. So, we just talked about the de minimis changes going to 54% or $100. That's still a really significant increase. You think about anything under $800, if it's, let's say it's just 54%. So, at $800, that's, 400 and change of tariffs. So, do those goods continue to get ordered? How ultimately is it going to impact the port volume? We don't know what's going to happen there. Any comments, Arjun?
Just to answer.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what's going to be interesting now is over the next 90 days, the rush, if there's now going to be a rush of volume coming in from, back to school, Christmas, now that the rates for China have gone down, to see what this is going to be looking like in terms of volumes coming into ports. Because my hunch is that the rates are going to go up in terms of container ships over the next 90 days, just due to the influx of everybody now trying to get these goods to the States prior to Christmas, back to school, et cetera, while it's at this 30% from the 145.
Yeah,
it becomes a question of economics, I suppose, then, doesn't it? It's whether your product, you can resell your products despite it being reduced, but it's still a heavy duty amount plus the cost of shipping, which may be going up as you mentioned there, Shane. So it then becomes a question of economics. Can I still sell this and make some money?
Well, and that applies to Prime Day too, doesn't it? Because some sellers have said, well, we're going to have to skip Prime Day because we can't get the products in, or it's going to be too expensive. Does this change that? Or, how ultimately is it going to, again, this is just, saying the same thing. How ultimately are sellers going to choose to react to this now that the tariffs have been reduced? So why don't we talk about how businesses can keep up with these changes? Patrick, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So, what you want to be avoiding are those numbered items there. Shipments being held up in customs. We're seeing a lot of that simply because of the calculation and then the process of getting payment to US customs. So we called this out 2 months ago. It's come to life. It's real, and shipments are getting held up because of those administrative activities. Fines and penalties for non-compliance. This is still relatively fresh, so I haven't heard yet of any fines or penalties being imposed. However, let's not forget, an executive order is the law, and breaking the law has consequences, and they typically manifest themselves as fines and penalties. So non-compliance, I would fully expect to be dealt with. Under and overcharge customs duty, it's imperative that you pay not a penny more and not a penny less than what you owe to US customs. Undervaluing goods, Craig mentioned it earlier on, misclassifying products, that's evasion. That's evasion, and there's laws against that. So get your HS codes correct, so then you are subsequently paying the exact amount of customs duty. You don't want to overpay. You don't want to use a generic HS code, which is going to have the maximum duty amount, and you're therefore paying duty unnecessarily. You don't want to be doing that, and you don't want to be going under either for the reasons I just mentioned. And bundle all that together, and what you want to avoid as any organization is a poor customer experience to your clients, promises which are not delivered to your clients here in the US.
Yeah, and we've seen a number of steps that folks are taking to try to, respond to this and build what this last period has taught us is that you need to have a resilient supply chain strategy and be able to respond to this. So, diversification of shipping carriers is one thing folks have been doing. Automating global trade compliance using, tools like ours. Working with a customs broker, although those folks are awfully busy, so go easy on them. Making sure your product details are compliant. We talked about that. HS codes, country of origin, declared value. And then, whether you build inventory to absorb some short-term headwinds, that's something we've seen a lot of folks do. So those are some of the options. Curious what folks on the call are doing. Are you diversifying, switching, investing in new technologies, rethinking it, or you don't know yet? So we keep track of this from week to week. Not surprisingly, I don't know yet has been the most popular answer, but we're always curious to see if folks are starting to make some decisions. And I suspect as these trade deals start to take shape, gentlemen, a lot more decisions are going to be made on how ultimately they're dealt with long term. Yeah, that's pretty consistent with what we've seen, isn't it? 59% in the I don't know yet category, spread kind of equally among the others. So yeah, until all of this settles down, I suspect that we'll continue to see a lot of uncertainty in the market, and folks just trying to figure out what to do. Although switching to local suppliers is getting more popular, diversifying suppliers also. But until all these changes are in effect, we really won't know, will we?
Yeah.
Another poll question for you. What are your plans for addressing the increased cost from global tariffs? So again, we've seen different strategies. Are you passing on the cost to the customer by raising prices, including a tariff surcharge, absorbing the costs, or do you have another strategy? So again, we'll ask you to answer that quickly, and we'll keep moving.
Question on this while people are answering. Susie has asked if we're passing on these tariffs to our customers, should sales tax be charged on these tariffs? The answer, Susie, is yes. Sales tax is applied to tariffs.
Yeah, that's that is something that's come up. So it's it's not just the tariff; it's the sales tax on the tariff that applies for, I believe, almost every state. And interesting here that 25% have chosen to absorb the cost. That's higher than we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I was just going to say, wow, that's definitely one of the highest we've seen so far. Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see how that evolves as maybe the tariffs come down, gentlemen. Maybe there's more room for folks to absorb the cost. All right, so why don't we talk about how we can help you out? We have tools and services available to help you navigate this craziness and make sure that you're staying compliant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is our pedigree, Avalara, of 20 years of providing compliance out there. We can provide everything from all the facets we've talked about, especially those three pieces, everything from tariff classifications, from automated to our team of 250 individuals classifying catalogs and your goods, calculating the appropriate duty and tax rates. We know with all of these changes happening on an hourly basis, it can become quite strenuous in understanding. We have a team that does that behind the scenes, making sure that all of these executive orders across the globe are updated to provide that. And then also our trade restrictions and content that we can provide out as well, based upon our global trade.
Right. Well, we've actually got a demo. So, Patrick, I know you're the master of the demo slides. So why don't we kick off our demo? Let folks what they're going to see here.
That's right. So we have a very, very useful tool which allows you to look up the HS code, so you know your country of origin, you know your country of destination, you know the description of your product, and you can, at your leisure, you can then browse and check the HS code, and then subsequently the duties applicable to that particular product. So we're going to show you a demo. It lasts 45 seconds. After the demo, you're going to get an opportunity, so stay tuned, you're going to get an opportunity to get a free trial of this software that you're about to see now.
Live demo. We'll see if it works.
It should be running. Yeah, we've done this a couple of times.
There we go.
Welcome to the Avalara Tariff Content Classification Tool demo. Click to learn how this tool can accurately classify your products. First, choose the country of import. In our example, we will use the US. Click to proceed. Next, select the country of origin. In our example, we will use China. Click to proceed. Next, let's describe our product. Click to proceed. Now, we are ready to classify. Click to proceed. The tariff classification tool needs to know a few more details. Click to select the upper material. Select the lower material. Click to proceed. We've now reached an HS. Click to drill down to reach the HS10. Since our product is a men's golf shoe, click to drill down. Since our product is not welt footwear, click to drill down. We have reached the HS8. Click to find the HS10. We have now reached our HS10. Click to see rate description. Here we can see the total duty amount for this product. This totals 28.5% general rate plus 125% punitive rate, which equals 153.5%. This concludes the demo.
There we go. If this is something that you're interested in, this is something that can help your business, then we are making it available. We're making it available as a trial. All you need to do is register. We're going to put a slide up in just a moment where you can click yes or no. And if you click yes, we'll get in touch with you. What the offer includes, well, you can classify products for 3 destination countries. Could be coming from anywhere in the world. It could be coming from Timbuktu, could be coming from China, could be coming from the UK, to destination countries, US, Canada, and EU, the European Union. So any country of origin, as I mentioned, and you can do 30 HS and tariff queries, and it will be your demo portal will be active from Monday to Friday on the week after you sign up. So if you're interested, then you just have to, when we move on to the next slide, you just have to select yes, and we will then in turn contact you and arrange your 5-day free trial. Remember, if you sign up today or tomorrow or even Thursday, it'll be activated from next Monday. Okay, it's not an immediate thing. We have to get set up, set you up, and it'll be activated from next Monday till next Friday.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting, Patrick. I'm glad we're offering this out, and again, this is also kudos to all these attendees that continue to come and see us week over week. So yes, please select yes on there, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And then, as usual, we're also asking if you'd like to talk to an individual from our team around this piece. Please select yes. We will get back to you within 24 hours on these pieces as quickly as possible here. We know this is the easiest way for us to find out who needs to be in touch with, your contact information, and you'll hear from our team.
Great. We got 2 minutes for questions, guys. Any takers for it? We've got quite a few in here.
Oh boy.
I saw one on here that, and I forgot where it was, but it was just in relation to, from Jason C., the current U.S. tariff on China imports is 30% total, or the Section 301 in IEEPA on top of that also. That is correct. 30% is not total. The Section 301s are not part of those. So the average Section 301 is around 20%. Add that to the 30, that you're around 50%. And then there's also a variety of other additional tariffs based upon the good, the HS code, et cetera. So yeah, the 30 is what has been reduced from that 145, but that is not inclusive of the Section 301 and a variety of other duties.
Yeah. Hey, gentlemen, Melissa just mentioned, are we having a webinar on May 27th? Yes, Melissa, our plan is to continue to have webinars every Tuesday. So we've just run out of time, unfortunately. We always run out of time. And thank you for your questions. If we didn't get to your question, we will follow up with you after the webinar. And I believe we have, I think we're just going to have to go to the end here because we've run out of time. But we will follow up after the webinar with this presentation. The links that you see on your screen are clickable. So you'll be able to go and see our resources. You can go see the demo again, actually, if you want to see that. And feel free to contact us. There's various ways to do that on our website. We'll continue to do these webinars every Tuesday as this news continues to change. There's always something interesting to talk about. We always run out of time. So we will talk to you next week. And thank you again for your time and bearing with us through the last 45 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen. As Craig mentioned, you will receive an email later today with the resources and a link back to watch again. You could also forward to a friend or a colleague, and they could register and watch themselves. Here is a slide just alerting you to some of the upcoming webinars that we have. You can take a look at that and others, or these and others at avalara.com/webinars. And then one last slide here is just wanted to alert you to our Crush on Tour conference coming hopefully to a city near you. We have a couple of dates in June already, and it's our customer conference, and it is going to be traveling out to you this year. So check that at events.avalara.com for details. Thanks so much, and we hope to see you next week.